Welcome to the Be Ambitious podcast. I'm so excited to welcome our first guest, Caterina Passarelli. She is a former journalist turned multi-passionate entrepreneur, author, and copywriter. She started her first online business at 21, which allowed her to resign from her news career by the age of 24, which is amazing. She's also the author of 6 romance novels, several of which have made it into the top 100 in their specific romance categories on Amazon. And I've read them all and they are great. Welcome, Caterina.
Thank you so much for having me on the Be Ambitious podcast. I'm truly honored to be here to talk to your audience, and I'm so proud of you for doing this podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, one of the reasons why I'm having you on as a guest is because your story has inspired me. You've actually been a mentor to me and now one of my dear friends. And I know that our audience is going to learn so much from your story and you have so much knowledge to share. So with that, I would love to hear you share with us, you've created successful careers in multiple industries. Can you start from the beginning and just tell our audience how you began your career, like what your journey has been since then and what you're really focused on today in 2021?
Yes, I would love to. So, my entrepreneurial career actually started by chance. I'm not one of those people who always knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur or to work for myself. Nobody else in my family is an entrepreneur. So it was something that I stumbled upon by accident when I fell in love with a workout DVD program. And yeah, I said DVD because it's that long ago. I was 17 years old and I found these DVDs that my mom bought off QVC, and I started to do them in my parents' basement, and I was just absolutely hooked. I fell in love with this program. So while I was going to college, and I have a bachelor's in English and journalism, I would, for fun, help my coworkers in this restaurant that I worked at, and my friends and my family, and just people on Facebook also to do the programs and to lose weight. But I made $0 doing that. I had no affiliation to the company. It was literally just something I did for fun. Fast forward to when I was 21. So 4 years of just doing the workout programs, going to school, working in a restaurant, all that stuff. It was my senior year of college. And I realized that you actually could become a coach with Beachbody, the workout company of the DVDs I was doing. And you can have your own independent business with them. So I signed up. And I didn't know anyone else doing this coaching business or anything like this. I just knew I really liked the workouts. I had no idea what I was getting myself into entrepreneurship. I just knew that I loved these workouts and I felt like I was already doing what people were getting paid to do. So it just seemed like the next logical step. When I joined, I went all in on my business. While I was going to school, was my senior year, I was a full-time student. I did 2 TV news internships. I was working in a restaurant. I started teaching group exercise classes, and I was doing freelance social media copywriting gigs. If you can't tell, I'm a type 3 Enneagram.
Me too.
Yeah, and I just love piling things up on my plate. Well, working my Beachbody coaching business, I did the majority, I would say 95% of it on social media. And this was 12 years ago. So if you can think about it, Instagram didn't even exist back then. It's crazy to think of a world before Instagram.
Yes, it is. It's hard to
Right?
remember what it was
It's
like.
it's wild. But I knew that I was already on social media. I loved Facebook back then, and I was already doing all this stuff. So I figured if I could use social media as a way to work a business and to help people and change lives and to also make money, then I was going to do it. Um, I when I graduated from college, so 1 year into working my business, I took a writing job at our local NBC News affiliate station here in Detroit, where I was doing one of my internships. And then later I moved into producing my own morning newscasts with them. But on the side, I just kept working on my business. After 2 years, I resigned from my news career. And since then, this is crazy to me. I was thinking about this while doing the research for today's interview. I've now been fully self employed for 8 years.
Congrats.
Thank you. Especially from a girl who did not know that this is something that she wanted for her life. After about a year, I think, 2015, I published my first romance novel when I was around 25. And for that, the business side of that is, after much research, I just like dove deep into figuring out what authors were doing, how Amazon, like Kindle Direct Publishing worked. I decided I was going to go the self-publishing route versus the traditional publishing route because of the entrepreneurial skills that I had learned over the years. So now I have 6 novels up there with 3 more in the works to be
Can't wait for
published
those.
to be published this year. I still do everything online. My focus is still the internet and particularly social media. And I would say, for a girl who didn't even know that she wanted to be an entrepreneur, I absolutely love it, and the life that it's given me and the freedom that I have today. So I encourage everybody who is interested in doing something like that, that it's completely possible for them. Even if they don't see how they can make it happen, the tools are out there.
Wow, that's a lot to unpack. I think what's really interesting is how you said, you didn't have entrepreneurship in your family, and it kind of was just something that came to you, and you went with it, and whatnot. I will want to ask you, when it came to quitting, resigning from your news career and doing Beachbody network marketing full time, what made you decide to take that leap? Was there anything that kind of was almost going to hold you back from doing that? I mean, back then, like 12 years ago, that was, or I guess, was it 10 years ago when you resigned? Um, I'm not the best at math, and I'm not bad, or I'm not afraid to admit that. But I guess back then it wasn't common. It wasn't common for you to resign from, quote unquote, either like a corporate job or the American dream or an industry that you got your degree in, to do something that was mostly online based entrepreneurship.
Yes, yeah, you're exactly right. There wasn't podcasts back then or YouTube videos where people were just openly talking about this kind of stuff. And I was um, looked at. People were saying like, "Oh, you just got your degree in this," because I did. I got my degree, and then 2 years later, I was like, "Oh, I'm going to do this other thing." So that threw a lot of people off track of just like, "What is she doing? Is she sure about this? What's going to happen?" But the one thing I would say is, and I don't use the word luck or lucky often, especially in business. I think we all, I don't feel like anybody just gets lucky and then their business blows
Right.
up. But in the department of parents, I did get lucky in that I have 2 parents who truly support me in what I'm doing. And even when I announced that I had resigned to fully work for myself, my parents had my back, and they saw what I was doing with this, and they saw the success I was having, and they saw how hard I was working. And they, even if it didn't make sense to them, like, to this day, my dad, who's an immigrant from Italy, he probably still can't tell you what I do for work. Any of the jobs. He probably has no clue how to describe them to anybody at all. But my mom, she totally gets it. She knows what I do. And my dad, he's like, what? But
Love that. I feel like that's a
they
lot of dads.
yeah, exactly. So my parents, though, they always supported me, and they always encouraged me, and they always had my back. And so knowing that, it was easier to make this decision. Also, it was just wise. I mean, at the time when I was working at the news, I worked a midnight shift full time, and that's a lot. I will say, I actually really enjoyed my job at the news. I enjoy journalism. I enjoy all of that. I love fast-paced things and hustle and bustle and all that incorporates the news world. I just realized I was looking at what was happening with like my online businesses, and I realized that I just could do my own thing. I was able to not have to work midnights anymore, or fill out a little sheet of paper and say, "Can I have these days off, please?" Or,
Right.
listen.
No asking permission. You're your own boss.
Yeah, exactly. And so I just realized that this was at my fingertips, and I was going to continue just going all in and seeing what would work. And I always knew too, actually, you know what? No, I was going to say, I always knew I could go back, but truthfully, I never thought about that back then. I never thought like, oh, well, what would happen if it didn't work out? I think that my personality um, has always been, I'll make it work. I'm gonna make it work. I'm gonna do the things to try my best. And if it didn't work out, oh well, I'll just start something else.
Yeah, no, that's the right attitude that, with anything that you pursue, that's a great attitude. So, how did the Beachbody business prepare you for later becoming an author? Like you said, you published your first book in 2015, and I know you have, other streams of income. What did that business help you with, prepare you with the most?
Yes. So even though I have multiple careers with different titles, I think of myself primarily as a businesswoman. So I think that my Beachbody business taught me to think like that, to think of myself as my own brand. And now I can't speak for other people in this industry or anybody else, but that's how I do things. When I have a business or a brand, you have to learn the skills around being self sufficient. And I think any entrepreneur would agree with that. You have to learn how to structure your time, how to set deadlines, how to handle criticism and negativity, how to have the guts to really go after your dreams. So, because I had done it once and I put myself out there in such a vulnerable way, it became much easier to do it again and to say, hey, I tried this other thing. Here are these romance novels that I wrote and put myself out there. And because I had built up, you know, I don't know what's the right word to say it, these guts,
Confidence.
right? To go after my dream prior, it even when it seemed unconventional, I still had the proof that it had worked before. And so doing like doing my first online business really helped me to learn these valuable skills and to learn to think in different ways. And I think that you can learn this stuff through trial and error, through personal development, like listening to podcasts, online trainings, conferences, books, and truthfully, just doing the things is how you learn all the self sufficient skills.
Definitely. I couldn't agree more. I think that's what it's done for me as well. And I think you set the example for me as someone who was in the business before me and has mentored me throughout my journey with Beachbody. So, yeah, it kind of just trickles down and it helps you in so many different areas of your life. I know everyone's probably wondering what made you decide to start writing books. I feel like people probably are interested in, something that I think many people probably don't think they can do. And I think they could learn a lot from your experience as an author. So what made you decide to start writing books, and why did you choose the romance genre?
Ooh, the juicy questions.
That's
Yes,
spicy stuff.
yes. So actually, I learned that most people on like their bucket list or their life goals, a lot of people have write a book as this goal that they carry with them through life. And I think a lot of people don't attempt it because they feel that they're not good enough, or maybe the writing's not strong enough, or they just don't know how. And so hopefully I can help relieve some of those questions in answering this question for you, because I feel like if people have it on their heart to write a book, that they should, and that in 2021 you could have a book up on Amazon in minutes. You could upload it and there's your book. So so I'm happy to answer questions on that. But how did I decide to start writing books and why did I pick romance? Let's go back to your question. So I'd always loved reading and writing. Ever since I was a little kid, my mom was always reading stories to me and my sister and my brother. And I even in school, as young as elementary, I just really took to the English classes and I loved to write stories and make up my own stories. And even when I was a little kid, act out the stories that I created, I guess. Just that's my personality. In middle school, I won a poetry contest. In college, I won a few random writing contests. I've just always really liked that. I wrote for the high school newspaper and then obviously went on to pursue degrees in English literature and in journalism. But the entrepreneurial side of it, that really came later. Um, and just like entrepreneurship, I didn't go around telling people that one day I was going to write a book, which I think is funny because a lot of people do that. A lot of people say they're going to write a book and then they never write a book, but just like with becoming an entrepreneur, it wasn't one of those things that I told everybody I was going to do. Again, I think I kind of fell into it, which apparently is this theme of my life I'm realizing in talking to you right now. I actually kept it a secret while I was writing my first two books. I didn't tell anybody I was writing them because I think I was nervous. And I also was nervous to say that it was spicy romance, which is what the TikTokers call it. I never even told anybody that I read romance. I kept that on the down low. And so it wasn't until that I had book 1 and 2, which they're a duet, written with covers designed, and they had gone through editing. Like I did all this the back end business side of it. And then I posted on Facebook, like I wrote a book and I'm
Here
going
they
to be
are.
publishing it soon. Yeah. So I really kept that a secret until it was time. So why romance? Well, I never saw that coming either. I didn't read my first romance novel until 50 Shades of Grey was blowing up. And back then I was working as a news producer still. We did a few like minor mentions of like the book sales and just the hype around this book. Like so many people were reading this book. And so I worked the midnight shift, like I said, and I'd come home in the morning. And then how I worked it is I would go to sleep right when I got home. Some people do set up their midnight shift schedules differently, but I would go to sleep. I realized though that I needed something to separate the stories that I had spent all night writing, the actual hard hitting news stories, before I'd go to bed, or else I feel like I was going to have weird dreams about just,
Yes,
the
separating real life from the
doom and gloom. Yeah, that I had spent hours writing about all night. So because the Kindle, I got a Kindle at this point. I was like, well, this book is getting all this success. And I see all these people talking about this book, people who I realized didn't even ever talk about reading before reading this book. I'm like, what is the
yeah,
hype?
I think that was my first romance novel too that I read. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it really is. It opened the door for so many people. So I will never bash 50 Shades of Grey. I know it's common in the literary world to put it down, but I am not going to. So I started reading 50 Shades of Grey on my Kindle, and I just read just to not think about destruction and murder and crime and all these things.
Right.
And then after I read the series, I just kept reading more. You know how Amazon is like, oh, you read this, you might also like this.
Yes.
So I realized I just kept reading more and more and more. And at a certain point, I'm like, I have probably read 1,000 romance novels at this point. So I really got hooked. And I didn't even tell people that I was reading romance either. I kind of kept that to myself. But it was a genre that I really loved. And so the idea for my first book came to me. It was actually the ending of the first book came to me. And so I figured I'd start playing around with writing and just see where it took me. And now six romance novels later, here I am. And I will say, for the business minded people listening, I write strong male characters, but I also write strong female characters. It's not uncommon in my novels for the women to also be millionaires. I write a lot in the billionaire romance category, contemporary romance, like rom-coms. So my female characters, they're very strong, driven women, millionaires. Some are business owners, a doctor, teacher, psychologist. I really like to show that too, that world in the romance novels that I write.
Yeah, I think that's what makes your books appealing too, is that they're both strong characters and probably sets you apart from other ones that have, a different take on it. And I think it's actually kind of cool that you wrote them all, like the first two, and didn't tell anyone until they were ready. I mean, I think no matter what, you took action and you didn't sit on the idea. You just went for it, you did it, and you published it, regardless of what what fears you had or anything like that, or what you thought people would say. And so you self-published all of them. I guess, is there a little insight you could give on that just real quickly?
Yeah, so all of mine are self-published. So when it comes to getting your book out there, you can go one of two ways. You can self-publish, which is you having control over everything. But it also means you have to be the person who finds and hires your editor and your cover designer, and you have to a formatter or you're going to format it yourself. You have to do these things yourself and hold yourself to the deadlines that you set, because there's not going to be somebody over your shoulder saying, well, where is it? So you have to really, like I said, be self-sufficient in doing that for yourself. But there are so many resources out there for authors. There are really great Facebook groups or courses you can take, YouTube videos where authors will give you recommendations for things like editors and cover designers. And I always talk about who my people are. Here's a side tip. If you ever want to know who somebody's editor or cover designer was, open their book, and in the
Oh, that's a
beginning
good
page,
tip.
yeah, in the beginning of the page, you'll see, I put mine right on the front where the copyright information is. You'll see edited by, and then it will say who the editors were, cover designed by. And so that was a tip I heard from authors years ago of just like, the information is there. So I went to the books that I really liked and I started making a list of who their editors and cover designers were. I started to see if, there was a theme. A lot of people use the same cover designer of the books that I really liked their covers for. So I reached out to that cover designer, and I've had the same team do all of my books. Editors, I've used different ones for different books. Some books I use multiple, I'll use several people. And those came originally from freelance website, Elance back then. But now I say, do that tip of looking and see who they're thinking, or get to know authors. I went to a writing retreat several years ago, and some authors they're very, what I love about the community is they're very forthcoming with their information. They'll just say, oh, here are my top picks. So I wrote them all down and I reached out to those people. And so that is something that I would say was very helpful for me. And in the self-publishing route, then you would just get your files and you can go on Amazon. You would go to Kindle Direct Publishing and then create an account there, and you can see all the information that you have to upload. Amazon makes it really easy to upload your cover and your file for your book and press publish, and there it is.
Wow. Yeah.
Or
That's
yeah,
awesome.
or you would go a traditional route, which means you would search for an agent. You'd put out query letters. You would, it's a slower process, but you would wait for somebody to say, yeah, I'll take you on and take your book, and then shop your book around and stuff like that. So that is another way to go too. I wouldn't say either one is better. I just think you'd have to find the one that works for you.
Exactly. I think one of the biggest themes from your whole journey, whether it be with, Beachbody or your books, is that you are really good at time management and juggling a lot. Whether it be, when you were working at the news and building your Beachbody business while also working at a restaurant, in school, like you were juggling so many things. And then even now, you made a good point about being a self-published author. You have to set your own deadlines, and
Mhm.
nobody's really holding you, accountable, as far as you have to hold yourself accountable. So I'd love to hear any time management tips that you have for us.
Yes. So I feel like time management is something that is super unglamorous and completely unsexy. But if you can find what works for you, it can help you so much into just relieve your anxiety around the new thing that you're starting or the new project that you're doing, or if you're adding more to your plate. I feel like time management is really is a key. It's essential. So one of the first things I would say is I would recommend this book called Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy. It's a very quick read, but he explains very well how you should start your day off by doing the thing that you need to do most, but it's the thing that we all probably put off. It's that thing that will move your business forward, will move your life forward, your health forward, all these different things, but you kind of it might scare you a little, and you just leave it on your to-do list every day and you just carry it over to the
We've
next
all
thing. You
been
don't
there.
Yes, me too. I've been there too. And he teaches you like you got to do that thing first. It's like it's the eat that frog concept. Do that thing first. So I would really recommend that book. Like I said, it's a very quick read. You can fly through that. And doing that has helped me. Also, some other non-glamorous tips would be and I want it to be clear that these are the things that have worked for me. So I'm not saying that this is what everybody needs to do. Find what works for you. So I keep a to-do list and I have one on my phone and I make it the night before every night while I'm in bed. Now, some entrepreneurs, or not even just entrepreneurs, just people, they like to make theirs in the morning. The first thing in the morning, they'll make their to-do list. I am not a morning person by any means. I actually back then didn't even mind that I worked a midnight shift. I am a night owl through and through. So just any, like, the less things I have to do in the morning, the better for me. I will make mine the night before, just being honest. I also really like this thing. It's called the Productivity Planner. I'm in no way affiliated with them, but it's a physical book. It's a planners for you every day. They're daily, and it kind of goes off that Eat That Frog concept of, it lists your tasks in priority of like, what is the most important thing you have to do today, then secondary tasks, and then just like a few final things. And it's not a huge list. It doesn't give you room to write 25 things that you're not going to realistically get through. It's those top things. And what I like about it, it goes with one of my other themes for my own time management skills, is it has these little bubbles for 25-minute time blocks. So I like to work in sprints. And with all of my businesses, I like to set a timer. I'll just pick up my phone and tell Siri, set a 20-minute timer, and then I just go. And I'm laser focused on whatever task I'm doing during those time blocks. Now, in the productivity planner, I think they're 25-minute little bubbles, but it's your planner. You can do whatever you want. So I just like to work in sprints, and whatever I'm doing in that designated time, I go all in on. So if I'm writing and I set the timer and it's 20 minutes, I'm only writing. I'm not editing. I'm not clicking on the browser to go to Google to research something for a book. I'm just doing the one task at hand. So those are the things that have really helped me. And for me, that 20 minutes is kind of my sweet spot. And it took experimenting. Like, you might like 25 minutes, and then you give yourself a little break, and to walk around or to get some water, stretch, or go do something, like go work out, do something different, come back, do another 20. Or sometimes I'll do 20, take a 10-minute break, 20 again, break, 20 again. But you find what works for you, and how much you can get done in whatever time works best.
Those are great tips. And I think the main goal of all of those tips is that you're focused. You're not,
Yes.
toggling between multiple different things, multiple different tasks. You're focused, laser focused on one thing at a time. And I mean, that would make sense of how you were able to juggle so many different things throughout, your career. And now also just being, only responsible for yourself, no one to answer to with your businesses, but you're able to focus on one thing at a time and actually get it done.
Yes, because it's so easy to, and I've been there too. I'm not saying I'm perfect in any way. I have totally been guilty of clicking on TikTok and scrolling and being like, oh my God, it's been 2 hours. What?
This mindless scroll gets all of us.
Yes, yes, it does. So I think that yeah, just the laser focus on the activities has helped me. But yeah, I'm guilty of it too, of that scroll. But you don't realize how often you can mindlessly scroll. You might think you're doing it, oh, I just check Facebook here and then for 5 minutes at a time. But if you were to really track, if you were to really look at your time spent, like, you can go on your iPhone and look at screen time per day, and you might shock yourself to realize how much time you actually are on these apps, that you could be doing something else if you want. Now, obviously,
Yeah,
like,
that's going to surprise all of us when we look at.
yeah, oh my God, it surprises me too. I'm like, what? Especially when I first started and I had to really figure out, while I was working other jobs or going to school, where to fit things in. I had to be really honest with myself, like, well, where are you wasting time? And it's very eye-opening once you break it all down and track what you do in a day. So yeah.
Okay, so I want to ask you like just a few more personal questions, I guess, of obviously you've had so much success, which is so inspiring, but I also want our audience to kind of hear a situation that maybe didn't go as planned for you, and how did you deal with that? What did you learn from it? Because obviously, as you know, any entrepreneurship journey, any journey, any career journey, there's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be roadblocks or difficult times. So I'd love to hear something that's happened on your journey.
Yes. Okay. Good question. So I've never actually spoken about this before. This is the first time. But it was the first thing that jumped out in my mind when you asked me. So my first two books, My Mr. Beautiful and Fighting for Mr. Beautiful, which came out at the end of 2015, they did really well on their release days. And I don't have any author friends back then. I didn't know anybody who else was doing it. So it's, when you're an entrepreneur, it's kind of a weird space because you don't know how to judge what you're doing because you don't have any other reference points. Like people aren't always saying like, oh, I make this much, or oh, when my book came out, it sold this many copies. So you don't know what's quote unquote successful, if that makes sense. So my first two books sold hundreds of copies per day, per like hours of going up on Amazon. And it was going really, really well. And they were jumping up to the top 100 in their specific romance categories, like the subgenres within romance. And it was amazing. And it was, looking back, it was crazy because I didn't have any like advanced readers, or I didn't have like a blog tour. I did very minimal marketing. It just included like a Facebook post, like, here it is,
Right, here
which is just wild. I mean, I feel like the internet was different back then and Amazon was different back then too. So I didn't have to do all of these things, like this huge list of things for this book to get in the hands of readers and to do well upon their release. The first two books, it ends in a cliffhanger. So a lot of people were waiting to come back. And so those two books, it was like just incredible. And with the amount of sales and the readers and people messaging me and all of this stuff, I'm like, wow, this is amazing, you know? And so then my next book came out over a year later. So I took time to write my third book ever, which is a standalone. It's not connected to those first two books. It's called The Power of Salvation. And I spent a lot of time writing this book, and I really poured my heart and soul into that book. And I truly love that book. But the internet had changed now. Amazon was different. There's a lot more books on there. The algorithm changes, like, I feel every minute.
all the time.
Yeah. So Facebook was different. But one of the mistakes I made was after those first two books, I didn't have anywhere for readers to go to stay like it connected to me. So other than social media.
Okay.
And with social media, you have to know how the algorithm works. And then really every post you make, you're kind of taking a chance that it ends up in the right news feeds. So that's not really controllable. I should have had an email list. I should have had somewhere for people to go to stay connected to me. So when I did write another book, I could email those people who read those first two books and made them a success in my eyes. Everybody's success is different. To say, hey, I wrote another book. But I didn't do that. I didn't have that set up. So when I launched or released The Power of Salvation, it didn't do as well. It didn't have the same number of sales upon release day. Like obviously it was selling and stuff, but it was not like the big hype around My Mr. Beautiful. And so it performed completely differently. And before I stepped back and used my logical mind to really figure out what happened and what was going on, it feels like you weren't good enough. It feels like, oh, maybe this book wasn't the right book, or maybe there's something wrong with this book. And I loved that book. So I was just like, man, like really disheartened that it didn't sell the way the other books sold.
It wasn't what you expected.
Not at all. Yeah, not at all. So I was really just like really pretty sad about that it didn't do what the other ones did. And then, so that was my third book. And I had to take a moment to be like, okay, well, does this book suck? Which I don't think so. I mean, hopefully not. I hope it doesn't suck. Like
it definitely doesn't suck.
Oh, thank you. It's all subjective. Somebody listening to this could be like, well, but I loved that book. So I still stand by that book. And I was like, okay, well, what can I do to turn this around? Because it didn't have this initial success. And when you look online, there's a bunch of conflicting information. Some people will say that if your book doesn't do well upon release or within its first so many months, it's not going to do well at all. Like the career of the life of that book, it's over. Just move on and write another book, which I did obviously move on and write more books. But I just really, really felt like I wanted people to read The Power of Salvation. So I didn't give up on it. I decided that I was going to learn how to do Facebook ads or Instagram ads and just figure out how to market this book, which would, well, writing another book, I moved on to write more books, but I still felt that its career wasn't over. Even though the launch in my eyes was not a success, I was like, I'm not going to give up on this book that I really, really love. And I put my Facebook ads on it. I talked about it more than the other books, and I just really didn't give up on that book. And today it has the most page reads on Amazon of all of my books.
Really?
Yeah, yep. Even
Wow.
books that have come out after that have gotten a lot of page reads too. People like the life of that book did not die after its not stellar launch in my eyes. Because yeah, like I said, I did ads around it. I talked about it more. I put it out there more, and I really just drove readers to that book, which is considered a backlist book. It's something that's, in the past.
Mhm.
Which you would want to focus on putting out your newest and only focusing on that. I still kind of send people to that one too. So a moment that didn't go as planned and felt very crappy in the long run, did well. But what could have happened is I could have said, okay, the launch was not good and it didn't sell as well. Well, I'll just set it there and keep focusing on writing more and just never talk about that one again. I could have taken it to heart and been like, okay, it's my fault. It didn't go well. People don't like it, whatever. But the feedback I was getting from people who read it, it was that they really liked it. So I felt like I needed to do a better job of getting it in front of people. And because I didn't have that email list in between those, which is my fault, I didn't do it. I had to work harder to get that one out there. But in the end, it turned around. And like I said, when I go in my Kindle Direct Publishing and I look up my stats, that is the book that has the most page reads out of all of the 6 books.
I love that you didn't give up on it. You knew that, it was a great book. And I think too, you said you used your logical brain and you realized the things that you could have done differently. And that was, I don't think it was because of those things, not because the book wasn't good. So you were like, well, if I can still do Facebook ads, I can still market this book. So I'm going to do it. And then I'm sure that was a great lesson for the next books that you released and for your new ones that you're releasing this year. So in hindsight, it was actually a good problem to have because you learn not to make that mistake again. And I think it says a lot that it has the highest page reads too. And I think I don't really like that idea of, if a book doesn't do well at launch, it's dead, like forget about it. I think that's kind of your mindset too. You're not one to give up easily. You're also one to find a solution to a problem. And yeah, I just think that's inspiring to somebody who, because a lot of people, maybe their first book wouldn't have done as well as yours. So it was almost like that was a great thing to happen to you, but then it also made you think like, oh, then the next release will be great too.
Yeah.
But it was a good lesson. It was a good lesson to learn.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, exactly. And I think like some authors, I'll listen to interviews and they'll say, oh, it was the 14th book that I wrote that blew up and my career is insane. And like their books are household names and stuff like that. So you never know when it's going to be or what's going to happen with different books or different things, or not even books, just like businesses. You might try something when you launch your business and it flops. But the thing is I like to look at myself and what I'm doing as like an experiment. I never think anything is like truly
I love
over
it.
until I've
Experiment.
decided. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, that was an experiment. Here's how that went down, but let me try something else now. And I mean, you do have to know when to move on from something. Like if
Right.
if the feedback wasn't good, or if I was just like, well, my heart's not in it. But if it's something that you truly feel the world needs or you want to do, you truly have that desire in your heart to keep trying. And then, just take, again, a logical approach. If time passes and you're like, really, nothing's happening here, that's when I would like reevaluate. what you're doing. But yeah, I like to just think of everything I do as like some just giant science experiment.
That's a good way to think about it. And I think another takeaway that I have from what you just said was that you kept writing. You didn't let it stop you. I think a lot of people, one non-success, something that wasn't as successful as they thought it was going to be, one launch or one business or one idea or one project or whatever, even just a post on social media.
Yes.
People, it doesn't do well and they think, oh, well, it didn't work. So I'm giving up, or I'm not going to do that again. And I think that's another lesson takeaway to learn, is that you've kept writing, even though you also worked on trying to get that marketed to other people, but you didn't let that launch stop you from continuing to write. So I think that's something that everyone needs to realize too, that just because one thing doesn't go as planned doesn't mean you just stop altogether or throw in the towel.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's so many factors. You could launch a business, let's say Etsy shop or something, I don't know, and you put a post up on social media and it flops. It gets like 2 likes, and one is your mom and and the other is your brother, and you made him click like on it.
Yeah.
And and you're just like, oh my God, well, nobody wants to shop in my Etsy shop. No, take factor in things. What time did you make that post? Was the picture
People
good?
didn't even see it.
Nobody saw it. That's what I would say. Probably no one saw it. And so it has no reflection of your book or your business or whatever. Because, logically step back from your feelings, which your feelings are, so strong and shouting at you like, oh my God, I told you that this was a dumb idea or that this wasn't going to work. And like step back and be like, okay, what are the factors here? Can I try again? Can I try it in a different way, a different picture, a different time, a different wording, and see if try again.
Exactly. There's one last question that I have. I'm actually going to ask this to all of our guests. I think it's something that would be helpful for anyone to hear. What advice would you give the 21-year-old you? And I think especially because you started your career at 21 you started your business at 21.
Mhm.
So what advice would you give to her if you could?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay. 21-year-old me. First, I would tell 21-year-old me that I'm proud of her. I put a lot of pressure on 21-year-old me to do a lot and to perform really well. Like I said, Enneagram type 3, and to just stack things on my plate and to just be the best at everything and just like go, 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 go. And I know that that comes with ambition and drive and like wanting to do all of the things. But I would just look back and say, you're doing a good job, especially because when you're a person who wants to achieve so much, you don't ever, or for me, I'm not going to speak for anyone else. I didn't stop along the way and celebrate any of my milestones. I just flew past them. It was like, boom, 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 next, next, what's next, what's next, what's next, without ever stopping and just being like, hey, you did this, good for you, and like taking a moment to like sit in it and feel it and to celebrate it or go and do something to celebrate it or make a memory of it. I just was so focused on like, what is next? And so now in my life, I definitely try harder to take the time to celebrate things. Sometimes I still will move past, and then time will
Check
pass and I'll
yourself.
look, yeah, and I'll catch myself doing that and I'll look back and be like, no, that thing you did was really cool. Good for you. So I would definitely just start off by telling her, like, I'm proud of you. I'd also probably tell my 21-year-old self um, to define success for herself, because we live in a world where it's so easy to go on social media and see the quote unquote success of other people, or not
Mhm.
even just social media, but maybe somebody's parents tell them what is successful or not, or like put a pressure on them, or their teachers, or they just happen to read something in a book one day or see something on TV and think, oh, that's success. Or if you are in a company, whether it's corporate or you affiliate with a company, there are big shiny milestones and dreams that you're told that you should want. But I would really step back and tell 21-year-old me, or just anybody listening, whatever age, to just stop for a second and define what success means to them as an individual. Because it's so often you hear people reach the goal that they thought would make them a success and they still feel unfulfilled. they still feel unworthy. They get there, they achieve the thing, and then they're like, oh, that's it. Because it wasn't maybe even a goal that they truly wanted. Or maybe it was a goal that they truly wanted, but they didn't know why. And then when they achieved it, they realized that their life didn't change. Their life didn't change
Drop.
at all. Yeah. And so I feel like I would just say define what success means to you. And it can change in different seasons of your life because, 21-year-old me I'm 32 now. I have had different seasons of my life and success probably look different. I think at my core values have always been the same of just to empower people, especially women, to see that they can do amazing things, unconventional things that other people might look at them and be like, what are you doing? But you can prove them wrong.
Yes. For
And
the
to just,
people in the back.
yeah, and to just inspire people or, to build a legacy for my future family. One day I'll have children. And I think that knowing what success means to me, my own definition of it, helps me to put blinders up when I see other people doing things instead of feeling that anxiety in your heart or of thinking like, should I be doing that? Or should I be doing that? Or should I be doing that? And like going after things that really don't mean anything to you. And
Yeah.
I think that like I would tell my 21-year-old self, like, stop for a second and try to figure out what success means to you. And if you write down a goal that success does mean something, let's say, hitting a list on Amazon or reaching a certain title in your company, step back and say, like, why do I want to reach that? I mentor a lot of business owners and they'll say, oh, I want to be this, or I want to hit this accolade. Why? And you'll see a lot of them like stop for a second and be like, oh, what? And it's because probably somebody put that on them. So, I mean, I'm not saying that's wrong. You can 100% have a goal to hit a certain number on an Amazon bestseller list. And just because you're like, I want that,
I want
but
that
at least,
title.
yeah, and that's okay. But just know that that's what you want,
Mhm. I
So
think
yeah,
nobody really asked the why question. I think that is something that, yeah, I think if you really reflect on the why, you learn if you for sure want to do that or not. And I think
yeah,
too, like I think about being a mom now, the goals that I used to have, if I think about why, well, the why and the what, like what will it take to get there? And then if it sacrifices time with my daughter, then it's a no. So yeah, I think reflecting on those things and why and what it's going to take, and that's really going to show you if it's truly something you're supposed to do and meant to do. And you really taught me the defining success for yourself, because I used to, especially in like the Beachbody world, I used to want all the shiny things, all the shiny titles, and want, what the other, like the top coaches, quote unquote, had or did. And then I realized I wasn't really happy. Like I wasn't loving what I was doing as much. And I don't even remember when we had this conversation, but I think it was a few years ago. And you kind of were like, you need to define success based on what you want it to look like. And ever since then, my business changed completely, my mindset, and I've just had way more joy and fun. And so I think that's definitely something that every 21-year-old and any age year old should hear and try and do with their own life.
yeah. I love that you said it brought you more joy because that's really what we need. We focus so hard on, and we're so rough on ourselves, especially as Enneagram 3
Yes.
people here. We just,
Achievers in us.
yeah, yes. And so
Never
the,
stop.
yeah, exactly. And you can never stop and it can bring you joy. I mean, but also if you're realizing like, oh my gosh, I don't know why I'm doing this and this is not even fun. I think like take a step back. And then when you were talking, I had one more thing I thought that I would tell my 21-year-old self that maybe can help somebody listening. And then I'll be done. Don't worry.
Bring
I
it.
would tell 21-year-old me that you are not 21-year-old me. I would say, girl, you are not too good to go to therapy because
Ooh.
I was like, I didn't like openly judge therapy, but I always thought going to therapy, talk therapy was not for someone like me. I was like, I don't have problems. That's not for me. And I felt like I wasn't like worthy enough to go and talk to a therapist. I thought, oh my gosh, like, my quote unquote problems are not as bad as somebody else's. So why should I go to therapy? And
Mhm.
then when I did go to therapy, I was 27, I believe, when I finally decided, I'm just going to give it a chance, because I heard a business mentor say, you know what, we go to the dentist and we get our teeth cleaned, but we never think about going to a therapy and working to get our brain, clean
Right? Why
or
we just
powerful.
common.
Yeah. So I would tell my 21-year-old self, like, girl, you're not too good for it. Go, because that'll change your life too. I feel like, especially ambitious people, we carry a lot of things around. And I don't know if anybody else it feels this way, but for myself, I keep a lot of things to myself. So it's like knowing that you are worthy of spending 50 minutes, however often you want to sit and just be selfishly talking about yourself to somebody, and just get out any feelings you feel.
Yes.
And
I
yeah,
think about I started going at 28, I think. I think it was like a year after you. You inspired me too on that part. And I think about when you talk about this, how much faster and happier I would have gotten to where I am now if I would have started therapy at 21 instead of waiting
yeah,
till almost 30 to finally go, because it did change my life that much. So yeah, I wish I would have started sooner. That's my only regret with therapy.
yeah. And but I do think, like, you have to, like, work up the courage to go. And I, like,
Definitely.
it was in my back of my mind for probably when I was 25, 26. Like, I thought maybe, but then I would always say, no, 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 no. And then finally it was just like, boom, I gotta go. And then I was, I, I don't think everyone has to be this way, definitely not. But I've been very vocal on social media about saying, hey, I go to a therapist. And I think to try to take away that stigma of
Yes.
who should go to therapy, or why you should go to therapy, or what therapy is, because I feel like I personally believe that anybody can benefit from it. So, but I do think, like, you got to work up the courage and you have to be ready to go. So maybe 21-year-old Caterina and Ashley probably wouldn't have went to therapy and
No.
been as honest with their therapist.
Uh, probably, yeah, we probably wouldn't have been as honest. I definitely think that would have been the case.
Yeah, yeah. So we found it when we needed it.
Exactly. Yeah, I'll have to do a whole another episode on just therapy, because it's a game changer for sure. Well, thank
Yeah.
you so much for being on the podcast today. And there's so many takeaways that we can take from this, and we learned so much from you. How can people find you on social media, and how can they find your books?
Ooh, okay. First off, thank you so much for having me. I'm truly honored to be on here. This means so much to me that you asked me, and I really appreciate anybody who took the time to listen to me share my story on here. I really appreciate you. How you can find me is I just go by my name on social media. So on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Caterina Passarelli, Caterina Passarelli. I always listen to podcasts where somebody has a name that's a little bit different and then they don't spell it. And I'm like, well, how do I find you? But
Right. I'll
luckily
put
it'll
in the
be in the
show notes too.
show notes. Yeah. But yes, I just go by my name everywhere, including on Amazon. I use my real name, which apparently is a crazy thing to do in the romance world. I don't have a pen name, but you can look me up on Amazon by my name as well. And on Amazon, you can actually follow authors. So if you find my name, you can click follow, and then it'll let you know when a new book is going to come out, or when something goes on sale, or anything like that. So social media and on Amazon, just Caterina Passarelli.
Okay, great. I didn't even know that you could follow authors on Amazon. So I'm going to start doing that now. So thank you for that tip. So
Thank
many
you.
great tips today. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.